important to say that during the 80s I was living in Germany, and during 10 years I was hearing that in many countries Jesus and Mary were appearing, but I didn't see that the science was trying to give an answer to this. For this you saw that Father Peter said it could be a fraud, it could be this, it could be this. Important for science is to say, is it or it's not? Then I decided to study these cases as an atheist to give some orientation to the people, because it's very easy to say it's truth, maybe or maybe not. It's important to say to the people the truth. And the truth showed me that there is a spirit, that these miracles are happening, and now I believe in this spirit.
Thank you
and
so
in
much.
these cases also.
Muchísimas gracias for your intuition and your guidance. Thank you, Dr. Castañón.
Thank you very much.
Michael's investigation uncovered other so-called signs from God as well. Our next story involves the testing of a statue of Jesus Christ in Bolivia. The claim is straightforward, that the statue on its own bleeds. Now, this is a live shot of that statue. We put this statue to the test, the highest test, the CAT scan, to determine if it had been tampered with in any way. And you'll see those results and something else that seems to happen to this statue, something beyond science, when we come right back.
This is a simple statue of Jesus Christ. It is decorated with artistic markings that depict his blood. In 1995, Emma Orabola's family bought one of these statues and placed it on an altar in their home. Just hours later, the family said they were shocked to discover the statue was crying. A short time later, they said, this incredible statue of Christ began to bleed. When we heard these reports, we flew to Cochabamba in Bolivia to test for ourselves. This is what we saw. If you look closely at this footage, you can see that a tear has started to form an inch below the right eye. The tear moves slowly down the cheek and eventually falls. We continued to film for hours with nobody able to touch the statue. And this was the result. Inexplicably, the statue began to bleed. We now had our first major forensic challenge. If this was not a fraud, then where was this blood coming from? Whose blood was it? Was it human? And what of the DNA? What would that reveal? We took a sample of this substance, which has the appearance of blood. Whatever the results of our tests, Cochabamba's local archbishop has accepted the authenticity of this statue, which is now venerated by the thousands of people who have seen it cry and bleed. But of course, if this is a fraud, there is one obvious possibility, and that is the statue has been tampered with. A device, an injection, some type of hoax devised by man. Emma's family agreed to let science test the statue. A CAT scan was chosen for the test, the same sophisticated probe which allows doctors to see what X-rays cannot. If there was so much as a pinprick in this statue, it would be revealed by a CAT scan. The result? The statue has no devices, no holes, not the tiniest of apertures. It has not been tampered with. Science has no explanation for the weeping or bleeding. Since it began to bleed, the face has changed. It now appears etched with the suffering of a man dying in extreme pain. Today it is hard to believe this statue was once an exact replica of the one you see on the right of the screen. The eyes no longer look like plaster, but indicate the reality of a tortuous death. Now it's time to test the blood from this tortured face.
Still ahead, Science tests faith again. What is the source of the blood dripping from the statue of Jesus? Is it human? A forensic specialist gives the result of DNA testing. And later, our cameras travel to Bolivia, attempting to record Cacho Rivas during the agony of a stigmata. Signs from God, Science tests faith, will continue.
One of the most remarkable manifestations of these tears from heaven occurred in Cochabamba, Bolivia. Cochabamba is a place of great color, contrast, and diversity. A place where the people show an openness to their faith as vividly expressed in a monument of Christ that overlooks their city. It is here that a statue of Jesus Christ has been reported weeping blood. In a documentary by Australian lawyer and producer Ron Tesoriero, the phenomena of this weeping statue was filmed and examined. Watch closely in this rare video as a tear begins to well about an inch below the right eye. The tear now moves slowly down the eye and eventually falls. Cochabamba Television ran the story shortly after the lacrimations began.
As a reporter, when I first came here, I was skeptical. But I was there for over an hour and a half. And there was no way that anybody ever got close to it. And there was no way that anybody could have put water or any substance that would have made it look like tears or blood. As we were talking to people, we saw a tear in his left eye, and it began to roll down the face. Then I took a small piece of cloth, and after I wiped the tear away, I realized that we actually had a drop of blood, and this cloth shows what I was able to wipe off the face.
Professor Ricardo Castañón is a neuropsychophysiologist who specializes in the subject of understanding the brain and human behavior. Over the past 6 years, he has investigated individuals around the world who claim to have apparitions of Christ and the Virgin Mary. His studies also include related mystical phenomena of the stigmata and weeping statues reported in Akita, Japan, in Civitavecchia, Italy, and here in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
I saw the blood coming out from his left eye. Then I decided to take a sample. The best place was 5-6 centimeters below the left eye, and I took the sample. Here we have a cotton with a little bit of blood, but I have taken this sample direct from the eye. For this I can say that I did it and that I saw it. But for me it's not enough to have only the typical analysis type of blood. I would like to have the DNA analysis. After I took the sample, I kept the sample only by myself all the time, and there's no chance that somebody could have touched this one.
Professor Castañón decided to have the blood officially tested at a genetic testing laboratory in the United States. He personally handed the samples over for testing so that it could not be said that knowledge of the origin of the sample influenced the outcome of the test.
If there's adequate DNA present, we can run it through our PCR-based testing systems and generate a human genetic profile.
The laboratory, after a thorough investigation, determined that results showed positively that there was human DNA present in the blood sample submitted. To further validate the lab's findings, another sample was then submitted to an Australian state government forensic laboratory who independently arrived at the same conclusion and thus confirmed the authenticity of the first findings. This was indeed human blood with human DNA present. But for many, this evidence may still not be enough to convince them that these are truly tears from heaven. So the statue was then subjected to a computerized axial tomographical scanner, commonly known as the CAT scan. This equipment shoots a thin beam of X-rays through the object from many angles and produces cross-sectional images on a computer screen. These sectional cuts enable every component of the image to be identified and closely examined. In this way, they would be able to determine if the statue had any holes or mechanisms that would allow it to cry or bleed. The finding was that the statue was of externally solid plaster containing only an internal void of air. They found no liquids or mechanisms in the statue. Thus, science was once again unable to explain the origin of these incredible tears.
The statue itself weeping has to have a meaning. If it's coming from God, it has to have a message. When a statue of Jesus bleeds, I believe it's expressing a very serious state of affairs in the church and in the world. I believe it's very serious.
A theological commission was established and carried out its own investigation. As a result of their findings, the bishop declared the lacrymations authentic. He has sought from the Vatican the conditions necessary to have it declared a signum Dei, an act of God.